Welcome back to Trending in Education. Dan Strafford, Brandon Jones, and Michael Palmer here with you. And today we're discussing the 2017 Gartner Hype Cycle. For those of you who remember last year, we went in depth on the 2016 version. Good to see them back with 2017. And some things, Mike, have not moved. Some things have moved furiously forward into the trough of disillusionment. We'll talk about all those things. But first and foremost, how you doing this week, Mike? What's new in your world?
I am hyped. I am amped. I'm fired up, man. This gets Gartner Hype Cycle.
Fired up, ready to go.
Are you on the slope of enlightenment?
I am,
because I've seen your work. You're not at the plateau of productivity. So. Are you sloping up?
I may be at an innovation trigger. Ooh. I think I'm like, it's like Inception. I think all the great ideas are about to happen. They're just going to need hype, and this show is going to be a hype show.
Oh, man.
And I'm going to hype some stuff.
I hope listeners that you're listening to it as you're falling asleep.
Yes.
And
yes.
Wasn't that in Inception was about dreams?
Yes.
Yeah, about doing some dream work.
You sure?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So get it on.
We need the teamwork to make the dream work.
I think we do. Yeah. That's what's Inception. That's what their t-shirt said.
Yeah. So I'm feeling good, Dan. I love the Gartner Hype Cycle. I think there's a lot of stuff to talk about on the curve. And, we could probably talk about the curve, talk about what's on it.
I like it.
It's going to be fun.
I think we probably should talk a little about. Hi, Dan, by the way.
Hi, Brandon.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm well.
Oh,
I'm
good.
Excited. I'm as hyped up as Mike here.
Yeah.
Should we, Dan, do you want to talk to us about, tell folks again about the curve, what this is? Because I have been living this every day basically since last year.
Yeah.
Because that last year, the 2016 Gartner Hype Cycle was my first.
Totally.
And my life has never been the same.
Once you start, it's like once you're through the looking glass, once you're through the hype glass, once you're on the other side of the hype, forget about it, right? Everything is, you plot everything on the hype curve.
I do. I like, that's how I manage my life.
Yeah.
So Dan, do you want to talk, what are we talking about, Dan?
Sure. You're almost putting the hype cycle on the hype cycle, which is blowing my mind a little bit here. So I don't know if I can handle that, but so the hype cycle is a way to track the maturity, adoption, and social application of specific technologies. Gartner is a American research, advisory, and information technology firm that puts this out every year and describes things that are ascending and are going towards adoption, and you're seeing in the mainstream, things that are then falling towards what we joked before, the trough of disillusionment, where maybe people are no longer using it, no longer looking towards it, and then on the other side, the path to adoption and mainstreaming of it in 5 to 10 years, mostly is the cycle. One that we looked at last year, so a lot of things that we covered off the entire podcast the rest of the year, things we came back to. Mike and Brandon saying they're pumped here because there's a lot on here we've talked about already, and a lot that probably will come to the forefront from a learning perspective in the next 6 months probably as well. Mike, going to you first. They have sort of in this report from Gartner 3 specific sort of groupings of things that we can look at. But what stands out to you? What are things on this hype cycle or the way they've constructed this emerging technologies for 2017 that stands out to you?
Well, a couple things. I did think the grouping you're describing was interesting. So there were 3 macro trends in terms of the hype cycle. One is AI everywhere. And we love our artificial intelligence. We love our robots and machine learning. We're excited about some upcoming shows where we're going to talk more about robots. So AI everywhere. We're all over that. Lots to talk about there. Transparently immersive experiences. We talked about the zero UI movement, invisible UI. Also just the immersive experience of augmented reality and virtual reality. So that's also stuff that we talk about a bunch and we're interested in. And then digital platforms, which sounds less interesting until you realize that's where blockchain is. So we definitely need to talk about blockchain because I still don't know what it is.
It's everywhere though. It is everywhere.
Yeah. It is everywhere. It's actually almost, it's peaking in terms of hype. It's about to head into that trough of disillusionment. So we'll get back to that. But in terms of digital platforms, that's also where neuromorphic hardware would land, which is where Neuralink would be. And that's basically like the human computer connections in your brains.
That was well enunciated.
Right?
Yeah.
Right? So anyway, that's all that's all the 3 macro trends that they're talking about. I feel like we've been on these trends for a little while. We tend to be on trend here, hence our name. And so I thought the groupings were interesting. What I found most interesting, though, and I was talking to you a little bit, Dan, right before the show, is that not everything on the trend curve moves at the same rate.
Right.
So the last thought, and I'd love to throw this to Brandon, is that smart dust.
That was the thing I was most excited about.
Exactly. Has it moved at all? It's exactly where it was, isn't it?
Yeah. So it is more than 10 years out still.
Yeah.
So like another thing, and describing visuals is great for this form factor. You on this curve, there are also different data points and color coding them. So there's some that are less than 2 years out. This is when they'll reach their plateau. Although actually there's none that have this are characterized this way. And then there's 2 to 5 years, 5 to 10 years, and more than 10 years. So I don't think it's a surprise that the yellow triangles, so like Lucky Charms, marshmallows, the yellow triangles, I don't think it's a surprise that they move more slowly.
Yeah.
Because they're farther out. And so either if you're going to be at the plateau or dying in the trough of disillusionment in 2 to 5 years, like you're probably going to accelerate pretty quickly across the hype index.
Yes.
Yeah. The hype cycle.
But smart dust, can you describe it one more time?
Smart dust.
By the way, you're going to do this for like the next 10 years.
Yeah, I know. I'm so excited. I'm not sure that I've gotten smarter, maybe dustier since last I did this. So it is self-assembling nanotechnology that with through electrical impulse can form anything. So you could be like, it's like, Voltron, I'll form the head, but it's like tiny little nanorobots.
Nice
reference. Like smart dust.
Yeah.
Form a wrench. And then like you give it a little command and then you've got a wrench. And so you don't need to carry around anymore.
A wrench.
Right. And it's like smart dust. Now I need a screwdriver. Form a screwdriver. But then eventually, like the concept of this is that it will be so sophisticated and the nano will get even nanoer that you'll be like, smart dust, form an iPhone 8.
Yes.
And you won't need to carry, like all you'll have in your life in terms of tools that you would need is, I suppose the smart dust can't form something that's bigger than the dust that you have. So if you want to be like smart dust, form an Audi, you'd need to have like a giant lot of it.
Yeah.
But the idea is that this technology could replace basically everything that is that size or smaller.
Yeah.
And it will harden into whatever shape and then go back into dust.
Mm-hmm.
You'll just like people be walking around with bags of dust in their pockets.
Bags of dust.
And that's going to replace all of our stuff.
Go ahead.
It's science fiction here a bit, but what's the moral, implication of something like that? Yeah, when you deal with someone creating a weapon or someone created, like, do you think that's something that
no one's ever going to be able to go on planes ever again?
That's what I mean. Like, it just seems like a science fiction moment, and we're living in it. We talk about Elon Musk and we talk about all the different technologies, but that's what comes to mind. Mike, what were you going to say there about smart dust?
Well, I just think it's kind of funny though, because it's very far away,
right?
And you can be like, "Oh no, it'll totally do that," but it's a little bit imaginatory. No, it's like, who knows if it's actually going to happen?
Your smart dust, you could form like a dictionary.
I could use smart dust right now. Let me tell you, because apparently the dumb dust. But yeah, I just thought it was interesting. It's right at the beginning, at the innovation trigger.
On the innovation trigger, it was there last year also.
Yeah. And then you see that steep like roller coaster curve. That's right. You were going like wee last year. I remember that. Yeah, it all came back to me just now. But like you basically, there's the climb from the innovation trigger up to the peak of inflated expectations.
Yeah,
which is just brilliant language.
Should we pause there and discuss what is at the absolute peak? Like what are the things that are the zenith?
Or what's climbing its way up there?
Okay,
whatever you feel like going with. Let's
stay
at the front.
We can do the climb. We can do the climb. What jumped out at you that was on the climb?
Well, 4D printing.
Yeah, that's an extra D.
Yeah. Well, we thought the D might have stood for dumb at first, but then as I read into it a little more, I did a little more research. It is interesting. It's basically like 3D printing, but then what you print is contextually aware, so it changes. So like the idea that the fourth dimension is time.
Sure is.
So
Stephen Hawking over here.
So stuff changes over time.
It's also called active origami. is another name for it. So.
Active origami. And for our paper anniversary,
thank you. That's what you're getting me.
I gave you an imaginary paper crane, and now it's an imaginary 4D paper crane.
Yeah,
so
nice.
you're imaginarily welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, but I thought 4D printing was one of those ones that not far up the chain, up the what is that first thing called? The initial slope up to the peak of inflated expectation.
Yeah, I think that's the initial expectation curve.
It's the hype curve.
Yeah.
It's like the hype slope.
Yeah, the hype slope.
It's like the hype game is strong here. And I feel like I might get behind hyping 4D printing because I don't feel like it's as far away because 3D printing's already there.
True.
And it almost reminds me
2D printing. What about that?
2D printing is that's probably on the plateau of productivity by now.
Sure is, yeah.
Yeah. But I thought 4D printing was interesting. How about you? Just cherry picking in the front area here of the hype cycle.
I mean, there's a number of things that we've touched on: the neuromorphic hardware, the Neuralink, human augmentation, which I think is related.
Yep.
Those are also probably a little farther out. Although the neuromorphic hardware is in the 5 to 10 years, not the smart dust 4D printing range of 10 plus years.
Right around the corner.
Yeah, right around the corner. That was one of the things that I we've talked about this on a previous episode, but change sometimes happens slower than you think, but oftentimes happens faster than you think it's going to. And so some of these things that are far out may not be, they may be closer in.
Right.
In fact,
and that one in particular is an interesting one, just as a tie back to universal design for learning. So a lot of like the neuromorphic stuff and the Neuralink, it begins with folks who might be disabled in some way. So like a paraplegic or a quadriplegic, they need to be able to sort of manipulate the world around them. So a lot of the tooling that is built out is in support of those personae. And then what we find through those innovations to sort of enable a more universal frame for people is that the innovations emerge out of that are applicable to a broader audience.
Sure.
So
it's the ramps and doors.
Ramps and doors.
Yeah. So moving a little further up, the things that and this is where I wanted to get to the top because I'm a top dogger. Approaching it, smart robots.
Sure.
Oh my God. Just wait until I think it's going to be, is it going to be 3 weeks before our robot show drops?
Yes.
We got to figure that out.
Oh my God. I don't know if I can handle it. It's going to be so exciting. So smart robots, stay tuned for sometime in the future. Internet of Things platform, IoT platform.
Right.
That's almost there. And then I think the thing that is two things that are right next to each other, which are at the very top, have not yet tipped over. They're at like the scariest part of the roller coaster.
Yeah. Hands up.
Hands up. Virtual assistants.
Right.
And connected home. Virtual assistants, so good.
So good. Yeah.
And they're changing everything. I think you can now listen to Trending in Education on Alexa. Although, spoiler alert, I tried it and it didn't work. It gave me something else.
Yeah.
And now I've unfollowed this pod and I'm listening to a different one. But the connected home and virtual assistants, Alexa, turn off my lamp.
Right.
It's all just so good. It's game changing. It's going to change education. I think it's good. Yeah.
And like, what's the trough of disillusionment going to look like there? Because they've had a nice quick run to get to this peak.
Well, that's why I think the peak, the curve is it's not actually the same curve for each of these technologies, right? And so it could be that even though they're at the top, like their curve still has more way to go up.
Yep.
But there's going to be things that once everyone has one and they don't do as much as we thought they would, that's how it's going to fall down into the trough. But then it's going to be just like part of our everyday everything, especially with Alexa, the Google Home.
Right. They buddied up, right?
They did. But Alexa is going to be in more and more everything.
Yeah. Plus the Dot, the form factor is getting more portable.
The Dot is so much. So I have two Alexa. That's what I got for my
humble brag.
Now as a second Alexa.
Yes.
And I got the Dot and it's much less resonant to the sound.
Ah.
Yeah. But it still works. set an alarm that got me here to work on time today. So that's good. Yeah. Thanks, Alexa.
Yeah. Although we were talking about getting Alexa as a guest.
We sure will.
Yeah, but I don't know if like repartee and quick-wittedness is really a core competency of hers just yet.
I think it is.
Is it?
Yeah. I know Siri has some sass to her. So
they have jokes and I guess. But like once you get to know her, it's like she's kind of like one note. Maybe that's the trough of disillusionment. Is like she won't be a great podcast guest.
Yeah.
And then people will be like,
that's it. That's the trough.
I liked her.
We can push her into the trough.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Two other things, and then I'll turn the floor back over to you, Mike. But I like also things that have just gone over the edge.
Yes.
That's always so good too. Deep learning.
Right.
And machine learning.
Right.
So we're starting to get disillusioned.
Yes.
But they're still towards the top of like high expectations, even if it's moving down.
Right.
High expectations, higher still than a lot of other things on this chart.
And you wonder how they actually get plotted there. Like what I would love, and this actually maybe is a good follow-up show, like get somebody from Gartner to go deep on this to explain their process. Because like we've talked about all this stuff. We don't have a snazzy little curve here to plot all this stuff on. But they're kind of like us, except they have a snazzy little curve.
They also have a site, Smartner with Gartner.
Smartner.
Is it Smartner? It's Smarter. Smarter with Gartner.
Like Smartner with Gartner.
I think Smartner with Gartner is good.
Yeah.
Like I have all these people, all these trending and educationers, all these trenders are going to be going to the wrong URL. I'm killing your direct traffic, Gartner. My bad.
It sounds like you need to be purchasing the other URL now after you've sent everybody.
I think so. It's just going to be a picture of us.
Right. So there's a lot to your point, there's a lot that's starting to move past the peak of inflated expectations into the trough of disillusionment that still sounds pretty hypeable. So like a lot of the AI is everywhere, but now it's more the shine is off some of the older apples and everybody's going to like the new ways to talk about what's hyped about machine learning and artificial intelligence. What I thought also was interesting was augmented reality.
Yeah. Ooh, that's the nadir.
It's at the absolute nadir. Thank you.
Yeah.
Also the bottom.
At the bottom too.
Of the trough of disillusionment.
Yes.
So like after you hit that peak, you go down the curve and it's a steep decline.
It sure is.
And then you bottom out and then you're at the nadir.
Yeah.
Like the absolute lowest point you could be. Is augmented reality really there? Is it just because Pokemon Go?
Yeah. Pokemon Go,
It came and went.
I was telling Mike earlier, I just downloaded it and I'm playing with my kids, but it's amazing now because there are Pokemon everywhere because no one's playing. Like I'm moving up the leaderboard.
Yeah.
Pretty amazing. I do have the question here about augmented reality, and maybe it is reaching out to someone at Gartner and getting them on, is is it just a form factor of the hype cycle that something has to pass through the trough of disillusionment? And to your point before about timeframes before, Brandon, are all troughs the same? Are all declines similar, or are there varying degrees of how they measure what a trough is comparatively across different type of technologies and different things that are being assessed here across the hype cycle? But AR seeing that steep a decline from last year even seems like, if we talk about change development year over year, seems like one of the largest ones, going from near the top last year all the way to the trough here. A quick move. Do you see it coming back up, Brand? Do you see?
Yeah, I think it will. I mean, I think that the way this works is there's lots of stuff that gets triggered. Some of those things move up the peak of inflated expectations. Most of those things fall down to the trough, and some of those don't get out. I think that AR does get out, and I think it'll move up the slope of enlightenment. And we've talked about a lot of the educational applications of AR and sort of edutainment applications. You're in New York and you're holding up your smartphone and you're seeing history of New York. I think that's interesting. I don't think that all curves are created equal, and there is also like the level of productivity from plateau of productivity. So we joke 2D printers 2D printers, they may be moving away eventually from the plateau of productivity, but boy, for a time, were they like their productivity, there was no more hype or less hype around them.
Yeah.
But they were doing a lot of work.
Heck of a run.
Compared to VR,
Right.
which is still moving up the slope of enlightenment, but probably, I wonder, is VR going to do more work as measured by like sort of contribution to GDP than 2D printers over the lifetime of 2D printers versus the lifetime of VR? I don't know, but I think that type of question.
Thank you for having that be rhetorical, because I also don't know.
I think that we should do a show on that question. It seems like that's a pretty good example of how these curves are very different. I mean, they were plotting them sort of all on the same. That has the same maybe expectations and time axes, but there's another axis of like actual degree of impacts, and that's obviously very different.
What if I told you we could have a 4D printout of the Gartner Hype Cycle?
Oh man,
because like that would be pretty interesting, because to me the way I see it is everything follows the same shape of this curve, but the speed by which it goes, so like kind of like
your extra D,
like the wavelength and the amplitude of each curve is going to be different. So like if you were to actually see them in that context, because it's a bit of there's some artifice in this graph where everything is plotted against the same X and Y
I would take
axis.
a third D even here, which is to say, what's the magnitude of the impact? And then you could add your fourth dimension of time to like make it interactive.
Dude.
Oh my gosh.
Dude, we're getting profound here. It is like, it's again ties back to the picture superiority effect though. So like, if you don't have the image open in front of you, like we should tweet it out.
We will.
Like,
let's not do it.
It's much better if you see what we're talking about. Although we're trying to be universal design for learning, we're trying to talk through the graph, so you don't necessarily need to see it.
Right.
But I think it would sort of the optimal experience. I think right now would be to have maybe your feet up, maybe a snifter of brandy or something.
That is frowned upon on the subway, but go on.
Well, that wouldn't be ideal, Dan.
No.
I mean, although maybe it would actually. Like, I think you're on like the D train. You got a snifter of brandy. You got your feet up on another passenger who likes it, and then you're looking at a printout, a 4D printout of the Gartner Hype Cycle.
Yeah.
If you can't do that, at least get something you can look at. But anyway, Yeah, so that was all I had there.
I think that's good. Educational applications, I think really basically of all of these things.
Right.
I mean, we don't necessarily have time to go deep on any of them, but we're looking at some trends, and we're an educational podcast as well. And
yep.
I think lots of these. There are probably 30 on this list here. I think most of them have applications to education as well.
Yes, except. What's up with blockchain? Can we get into that a little bit? Because like blockchain, like Bitcoin blockchain, I've tried to understand it. I've read about it a few times. Yep. I've listened to some podcasts about it. I've got some engineering friends who are like they're way up the river. Like they're in country. Like they're like blockchain.
They're working on the blockchain gang.
Like, blockchain is the future. And like I was still trying to figure it out, but then I look at the hype cycle. I'm like, oh, it's heading into the trough.
Yeah.
May not even make it out. I got time now. I was all worried. Like, it's like you got to learn. You actually want to focus on stuff that's about to trend up.
Yeah.
So when the stuff's starting to dip, it's like I'm gonna wait. I'm gonna
saying I'm late on Pokemon Go
a little bit, but yeah. So like blockchain, I was sweating it. But then Gartner, I'm smarter now with Gartner, and I'm relaxing and not worrying about blockchain
I
anymore.
think blockchain is definitely going to make it. I think there's a question of Bitcoin, which is a blockchain technology, but is not synonymous with blockchain. I think there's a question of, is that going to make it?
Yeah.
And I think the Bitcoin speed has become a real problem with Bitcoin. Like you may end up having to wait days for your ostensibly immediate transaction to go through.
Yeah, for your shady materials to get shipped.
For like your Silk Road action. That's not great.
No.
So my favorite, so like the apocryphal information about Silk Road is like you could order this dark web stuff. Yeah. You could order, not just all sorts of, whatever on Silk Road, but you could get like people to steal you a car. But the thing that the apocryphal thing that I like hearing was not just any car. You could get them to steal like a specific person's car. I'm going to put an order out to steal Mike Palmer's car, and someone would sign up for it. You transfer the Bitcoin and snap.
Boom.
I'll be driving in your Hyundai.
Yeah. So you got good working knowledge of the blockchain and the Bitcoin. Yeah. I feel like I kind of knew what you just said there, but I don't know if I knew it as confidently.
The thing there's a lot of industry that's built around, providing services that blockchain obviates. So like a lot of the financial services are, secure transactions that blockchain obviates, and that kind of same transaction can replace services not just in financial services. And so I definitely think that's going to be here. That's going to make it out of the trough.
That's classic disruption, right? Yeah. Like it's a disruptive model, but I just found it like so disruptive that it's hard to grok at a fundamental level. Like I understand its application. I understand that it's a means of commerce and a way to understand transactions and transactional economies, and it's disruptive. Get all that.
Yeah.
But when you actually you read like the technical specifications of it, where like it's like gets into like cryptography and like you're deep on that.
I've gone deep. I went down some blockchain rabbit holes in the past.
Good for you.
I'm not laying code that people are going to use for writing blockchain script. But I think I've got a pretty good working understanding.
But you know what?
Congratulations on all my success.
Well, no, all that knowledge is now less useful because that's heading into the trough of disillusionment.
That's true. It is.
Yeah.
But I feel like there's like swamp of sadness here.
It's like candy. It's like
Fight the Sadness Artex.
It's
Candyland.
Candyland.
Yeah.
So anyway, I want to get a little blockchain in, and Brandon. I think Brandon gets a little thumbs up for being a blockchain quasi expert.
Yeah, thank you. I think I'm the training and education's resident blockchain expert. Don't put me out into the wild.
So does proven.
Drones. One last thing.
Drones. We got to get drones real quick.
Drones on the way down.
Yeah.
I think it was Trevor Bauer. The last year World Series, he cut his hand up with the drone. The Indians probably lost the World Series as a result.
Yeah.
I think that's what caused drones to go down.
Certainly for Indians fans.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah.
Cleveland, there's if you look at year-over-year purchases, same-store sales of drones, there's a big black hole there in the Lake Erie North Coast.
For sure.
He does not like hearing about it on Twitter. He blocks anyone who brings up the drones on Twitter. It's pretty
no doubt.
But drones, I think they're gonna diversify. Like the ones who are little, like, I'm a little bug lady, can fly around. Like I get tired of them.
People used to fly them in this area.
No, I know. I was one of them. I actually, interestingly, before I this, I threw out my cheap little drone.
Did you?
Yeah, I didn't even know. I was just participating in the hype cycle. But but there you have it.
And these to be clear, these are like the commercial drones, not the military drones that
sadly are continuing to peak.
Correct. Yeah.
A lot to dig into here. That's going to close it out, though, as we have reached time on this podcast. Can talk for many a minute about the
Dan,
Gartner
we can't.
Hype
No, we
Cycle.
can't end. We can't. I'm stepping on your clothes. We can't end on military drones. I want to talk about one other thing. I need a palate cleanser. What else we got? What else?
Sorbet on the Gartner Hype Cycle.
Here's something I don't know what it is: enterprise taxonomy and ontology management.
I did look that one up.
Okay,
so that one.
Talk at me.
The ontology part. It's basically naming the constituent parts of any sort of conceptual framework. So for artificial intelligence, you want to identify like the component parts that are involved in designing machine learning or designing artificial intelligence. So maybe it's like the corpuses that we've talked about for like semantic expertise when you're doing natural language processing. The idea that you need to have an ontology, like a breakdown to its simplest components.
How did this ever make it onto the hype cycle? I'm impressed with your knowledge, because I knew what none of those 5 words meant.
Yes.
Well,
I knew ontology a little bit from philosophy. So like it comes down to like the ontology. ontological argument is trying to break it down to like sort of the most fundamental components.
Yeah.
And then the taxonomy relates more to some of the stuff that I have experience with around like content management systems and a lot of the metadata stuff that we get into. So like you need to break stuff down to its component parts and then apply some taxonomy to it. So what I like about it is it's almost like doing your homework before you get some snazzy new robot at the end. Like it's actually saying that your underlying sort of conceptual model for how you're breaking down this thing is sound, and you're actually adopting a more mature process there, as opposed to like, I made Alexa, sing to me. And now look at how much smarter our stuff is. So it's a little almost like a back end angle on artificial intelligence and that kind of stuff. That's my understanding.
I'm disillusioned. I feel appropriately disillusioned. I'm ready to hand it back to you, Dan. That thank you for that momentary palate cleanser from our previous
comment. And I almost want to step on you to finish with something better, but I think we should just end.
Let's just do it.
Let's just end.
Goodbye.
Well,
that's going to do it for this episode of Trending in Education. Find us on Twitter at Trending in Ed, of course. The same on Facebook, trendingined.com, and we'll check you back here on Trending in Education next Tuesday, where we talk about EdTech and EdTech influencers in the classroom. Until then, thanks for listening to Trending in Education.